Well, let's begin at the beginning, and it was probably a song like Begin the Begin that brought your parents together. How did they meet?
Actually, my mother saw my father at Jimmy Walker's Central Park Casino in New York. Eddie Duchin was in one room. My father was the orchestra leader in the other room at the opening. That was in the 20s. As you know, the 1920s and the 30s and 40s, the big band leaders were the rock stars. My mother saw him and found him very attractive, but nothing came of it that I know of, except me later. And earlier on, she'd also seen another orchestra leader named Buddy Rogers, who married Mary Pickford. And they were madly in love. I mean, all the life that I can remember, Buddy Rogers would fly to Memphis or Blytheville to see my mother, even when he was married to Mary Pickford. And it was extraordinary in the sense that my mother wanted to be around that world, and she saw Buddy Rogers, and she said she wanted to have a date with him, and he with her, and there was no way to get through except Buddy Rogers said to her, "What's your favorite? What song would you like for me to play?" And she said, "Ghost of a Chance." And it sent a message: "I don't stand a ghost of a chance with you." Well, boom, that was an immediate, they were starting to go together. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he says he was marrying then America's sweetheart, Mary Pickford. And my mother cried every night for a month, and his chauffeur would take my mother out and say, you know, it's just temporary. Temporary, marrying somebody is temporary, but in a strange way it was. And up until when I moved to Hollywood, the first place I can remember going was to meet Mary Pickford with my mother. And Mary Pickford, for those of you who are much younger than I, would not remember, but she was really the most important star of her day. And she knew about Buddy and my mother, and she said to me, she said, I know this relationship's been going on a long time, and Buddy was showing her around Pickfair, this incredible house. And she said, I notice you hold your hands in your pockets. She said, a gentleman doesn't do that. Take your hands out of your pocket. She said, do you know that they're in the other room right now, probably kissing? I said, what? She said, your mother and my husband are probably kissing, but it's been all right with me. I knew I could never have him completely. She said, now, are you a good actor? I said, I just got into business, I don't know. She said, well, I'm going to, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to do something with you, and we'll see how it works. She ordered a glass of milk, and I thought, well, she's a healthy lady. She ordered another glass of milk, and I could smell this huge smell of bourbon. And she downed 2 bourbons in a glass of milk, and she said, now I'm going to faint. And you're going to fall on top of me and start doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and they're going to come in, and they're going to be very upset, and we'll see how that works. Well, I'm thinking, I met the biggest nutcase in my life, Mary Pickford. She throws herself on the floor. I throw myself on Mary Pickford, and I couldn't throw myself to kiss her because I figured that's a little weird. All of a sudden, I kept, come quickly. They all came in, and my mother said, oh my God, she's all right. And Buddy said, no, she just does this. She's an actress. And she said, well, obviously, my son's an actor. And they didn't mean a thing about it. Didn't mean anything. We just got up and went on through the evening. And that was my introduction into Hollywood. It was a strange thing because I'd come out of an era which was very, very romantic, into an era that was very realistic. We had James Dean and Brando, and the studio came and said to me, who would you like to be? And I said, I can't, that myself. They said, well, who is that? I said, I don't know. So they took me upstairs, and they started on the process of elimination. They said, now, you see all those suits? Which do you like of those? And I'm looking through, and there's a short little suit with wide shoulders, and that's Fred Astaire. I'm looking at the other, is Rex Harrison's clothes from something, and then I looked at Clark Gable's wide shoulders, good looking, but they're, you know, kind of padded, and then Robert Mitchum's, they looked like something out of a wrestler might wear, and one after another. And then I saw Cary Grant's clothes, and they looked wonderful, but there was that much padding in the back because he was round-shouldered. And I started seeing how they had manufactured movie stars. And I said, I'd like to be like that guy. Next thing I know, they're giving me light comedy sort of roles, but there were formula pictures like Where the Boys Are, and then I was in All the Fine Young Cannibals with Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner. And they were dressing me well, and I thought, I like this wardrobe better than James Dean. He only had some blue jeans and a T-shirt. And I really didn't take it seriously, really at all. And then I started to realize that I was working with some incredible actors, people like Frank Silvero, who had been in Viva Zapata with Brando, and people like, oh my God, Eddie Robinson and Thomas Mitchell, who had played the father of Scarlett O'Hara. And one after another, I'm working with really better and better and better actors. And they expected, it was like playing tennis, it had to come back quickly. And I started to learn the craft on the job. And after 50 years and 80 some odd films, hundreds of TV shows and plays, the real thing that helped me was going out in the little towns, as I said before, playing dinner houses. And you knew that if you had a comedy, there's a setup and a punch. And you have to deliver that setup and punch to get your laugh. And if you don't, you're not doing it well. That taught me timing. So I started to learn it just on the job. It's sort of like what Mr. Obama and Mr. McCain have it in front of them. You're not going to know anything about what you're about to do until you get there. Then you're going to get on the job training.
Now, as a young man, you were quite a hustler, reselling flowers and bourbon to make a dime. But I think one of your greatest performances was hustling the role in Rome when you went into the hotel.
Yeah. I'd found that being under contract to MGM at the time was good and bad. The bad part of it was that they had you under contract, and we were a new era, and they could get other actors. And there were guys like Warren Beatty getting roles, and I'm thinking, well, why have they used him and not me? They just felt what they didn't have, they wanted to get, and what they had, they didn't need. So I went, and I used to climb the script cage at night where they did the mimeographing, and I would read every script before the producer would get it, and I'd know which part was right for me and for other actors. And other actors and actresses would come to me and say, how do you know all this stuff? I said, I have an inside person. And I would tell them there's a great role for him in this or great. But I knew in this picture, Light in the Piazza, there was this part of this Italian boy, and I went 3 times to try to make them to notice me. He said, look, it's all dependent upon the Italian boy. You can't manufacture this. I said, yeah, but he said, we've got someone already. He's great. His name's Thomas Milan. I said, but he's not Italian, he's Cuban. They said, well, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. I said, it's not the same thing. An American can play an Italian as well as a Cuban can do it. Why don't you give me a chance? No way. So I figured the only thing to do was to write to the head owners of the studio, look, you've got a studio, you've got these people under contract, you're paying us, why would you not use us? They wrote back to the people at the studio, why don't you use the town? They said, call me in the office, just get off our back. You want to work, don't write letters like this anymore. So I followed Mr. Thaw around, and he was the one who was going to make the decision. And I found out he was a Lothario of sorts, and he had a lot of girlfriends. And so I found out he was in the south of France at the Hotel de Paris in Monte Carlo. So I went and worked every day with Rossano Brazzi on the accent so that I knew that I could do it. And then I studied Italian, and I really had it down. I arrived at the hotel, and I found out which floor he was on, the 3rd floor, and I waited for the room service waiter, and I said to the room service waiter, I'll give you $100 if you let me have your jacket and your pants when you serve this room. And he let me do it. And they ordered some dinner, and I knocked on the doors, come in. I walked in, and they said, just put it over there. And I said, scusi, ma voglio il conto qui o dopo, adesso? And he said, what? I said, you wanted the check here or you want it later? What do you want? He said, just put it over there. I said, you want I pour you the champagne? No, don't pour me the champagne, just put it over there. And then I said, the lady, and there's this beautiful girl in bed, and this head of the studio in his silk gown. I said, would the lady like anything? He said, would you just leave it there and put down 20% for yourself? And I said, now you see, I am right for the part. And he turns around and he looks at me, he says, damn, not you again. He gave me the test, and I got the role.
Hamilton.